This is Nitin Dahad with the Times at Hardware Pioneers Max 2025. And I'm speaking to John Moor, who's the Managing Director of the IoT Security Foundation, but also part of the larger TechWorks network in the UK as COO. John, hello.
Hello, Nitin.
Did I do that right?
I think you did. I think very good, yes.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, TechWorks is the umbrella organization, which used to be NMI, and it's got many sort of bits underneath it for the whole chip ecosystem, is that right?
That's correct, yeah. So where we've grown up from is in 1996 we were established as the National Microelectronics Institute. Of course, technology doesn't stop. A lot of technology is based on semiconductors, but it's the applications. And so what we've done is adapted with the industry that is in the UK. Very much, a lot of our stuff is based in semiconductors, but we've moved into areas like automotive and AI and cybersecurity.
So you've got basically organizations under TechWorks addressing that, and you're leading the IoT Security Foundation.
That's correct.
Excellent.
Yes.
Now, the Hardware Pioneers Max, I've been having a few conversations here. Looks like CRA, Cyber Resilience Act, and various other things are of concern to people. I was talking to Kudelski earlier, Kudelski IoT. They're talking about the stuff in AI as well. Yeah, so the work they're doing with secure enclaves in AI, but it's a big thing, and that's kind of what you've been focused on for a few years. Tell me, what are the hot topics for you at the moment?
Yeah, so that's where we started, 2015. 2015, IoT was all the rage. We were at the peak of inflated expectations on the Gartner hype curve, but nobody was really talking about security. So we recognize this as an issue. There is no IoT without security. I think 10 years on, we have made progress, but we'd like to see more progress. We started talking around things like trustmarks to help purchasers of IoT and connected equipment make better purchasing decisions. But of course, regulation is writ large now. It's coming through internationally. And of course, here in Europe, the UK led on its Product Security and Telecoms Infrastructure Act, which really focused on the consumer. And now more recently, the Radio Equipment Directive in hand with the Cyber Resilience Act is big news. And there's a lot of people who are concerned about it.
Well, I mean, I think we've been talking about it, as you say, for quite a few years, but we just ran a report, I think today or yesterday, in the Times on automotive cybersecurity, and the number of attacks. It's just astonishing, through the APIs and through the different sort of consoles, infotainment systems. But I mean, that's at a different level. But I think you're talking about the consumer products as well.
Well, right from the consumer, and the reason why consumer is important is that really we see as the baseline. But of course, it goes all the way up through industrial IoT, enterprise, medical, right the way up to national infrastructure.
Okay, yeah. So you've been working on quite a few of the standards for the UK, and some of those principles that you've had have been adopted in various European and other sort of policy directives for security around the world. Just tell me a little bit about what you've been working on.
Yeah, so I mean, where we started, again, going back to 2015, we didn't feel there was the need for another standards body because there are plenty of them, but what was really needed, and we needed to move fast, the problem was here and now. So it was best practices that we really focused on. So we took the best practice and give that to the developers to say, this is how you go about security. Now, standards move slower and regulations move even slower, but the world moves much quicker. Yeah. So we've maintained a position where we are looking further ahead and say, we know what's coming down the line, what we do in our best practices, and later this year we will be publishing our next version of our framework to update that. This is in advance of what you can expect to see in standards in the coming years, and also regulation a little bit further down the line.
Okay, and whenever your reports come out, surprisingly, I actually read them. And to a certain level, I understand a lot of it. But something's coming out soon, isn't it? In the next few weeks. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we've tried to put thought leadership into the areas where we would really want to put special focus on. So even if you look at right now, contemporary supply chain is a big issue, global supply chain. We were focusing on supply chain maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We've published a paper on that. What we're about to publish, so it's a bit of an exclusive for you, Nitin, is we are going to create a group really focusing on an essential element of security, which is about device identities. Because if you don't know what's on your network, if you cannot identify it, then actually that's a massive problem. So we're looking at right the way through the supply chain, from the chip, through the product, to the cloud and the services, the role of device identities. And the reason why this is important is that device identities have been a thing and are around, but there are different groups having different conversations about how they use them. And what we're trying to do is unify that all the way through.
That's interesting, because I mean, I've seen obviously all the chip manufacturers talk about lifecycle management, like NXP, Microchip, but how's that different? Are you saying there's going to be something that everybody can then plug into?
I think the way I think about the device identity is a thread that runs all the way through the life cycle.
Yeah.
So it's born in the factory right the way through, and we talk about effectively there's a birth certificate there, you've got a through life certificate, and we've even been discussing things like, well, maybe there's the equivalence of a death certificate, because at some point you want to retire that and gracefully, so that identity is no longer valid.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been trained by one of our friends, Hayden Povey, and he's always talked about that whole life cycle. But what I'm trying to ask is, what is it in your paper you're going to publish that's going to sort of help unify that?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do is put a framework together to help people think about it, what its role. So whereabouts are you in that supply chain, in that life cycle, and what is your interest? And what we're going to try to do is raise awareness of good practice, best practice, and we may even get to the point where we say, well, actually what's missing is we need to put together maybe an open standard. As I say, we're not a standards body, but we do like to...
But you do recommendations,
yes,
which sometimes get adopted, and you publish these and people look at it.
Well, exactly that, and I think if you look at the expertise within the foundation, these are the thought leaders, these are the people that know what's coming down the line, so very naturally we have conversations with the policymakers, the government and the standards bodies. I think the chip guys have been ahead of the curve. Actually back in 2015 they were not, but they woke up very quickly to this, because obviously this is where life starts with products, with silicon. So the chip manufacturers put an awful lot of effort in, and we commend them for all the work that they put in. But the frustrating part from their perspective is the world is taking a little bit longer to actually to use what they provisioned.
Which I've been hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and our message to them is, don't let that deter you. Keep going, because the world at some point, when this stuff is deployed, if it doesn't have security that can be used, there is a technical debt. And that has to be repaid at some point, either product recall, or you need to layer on different pieces of software or something. So it's a good investment for the industry, and the chip guys have done a great job, I think, in getting their house in order.
On your day-to-day job, what is it that this week, this month, people are really talking to you about? What are the big hot topics? What are they saying they're concerned about or trying to address?
Well, I think what we see, obviously regulation is a concern for a big part of the industry. The people that have been with us and are with us day to day, they've seen it coming, so they're on board with it. So the implications of that, how do we reduce the cost, how do we make it more efficient? I think what we've seen more recently is a focus on supply chain security, as I mentioned earlier, because supply chain attacks, if you can get in the supply chain, you can affect a lot more of a payload. Increasingly hardware security, and of course we can't really have a technology discussion without mentioning the role of AI and the impact that that's having. So we're starting to see IoT and AI are natural bedfellows.
Well, you're seeing all of that sort of processing in the sensors now, and then you need some, and the connectivity, so I guess you need to make sure that it's all secure.
This is right, yeah. So whereabouts, how do you go about architecting your security at the edge? Actually at the endpoint, at the edge, which can include the router, and we put a lot of emphasis on our work over the years on the router, because not only is it an attack point, but it's a really good way to help provision security, and obviously right away back up into the cloud and the data center. So
what's next for you apart from the report? What else is happening?
Yeah, okay, so we've got the report coming out.
May the 15th, yeah?
May the 15th is an open invitation to your readership to come and join and listen to what we have to say. What we'll do is set out what we're trying to do and invite people to come in and help us shape the future right at the very source of security with device IDs. So the event will be published on our website. We'll announce this at Cyber UK, which is happening May 6th to the 8th, which we will be at.
Okay.
But then later in the year, we'll have our annual conference. It's our 10th anniversary, but our 11th conference. And we will be combining IoT security with AI safety and security. Because as I mentioned earlier, those are very natural bedfellows.
Yes.
IoT produces lots of data, AI eats a lot of data. So that we've got to make sure these systems are resilient and robust.
Just one point I was going to make, because I mean, EE Times global, and we're here in the UK at Hardware Pioneers Max, but you have chapters around the world, don't you? So just highlight some of those.
Yeah, so a lot of interest in India, actually. In fact, we're growing several chapters in India, even whole states. We have a chapter in Texas. We've got a chapter, actually a couple of chapters in Europe, in the Netherlands and in Romania. And we're hoping to announce more activity with our friends down under in Australia. But thank you for the opportunity, because what I would say is to your readership, if anybody wants to start a local conversation in their region
around security,
IoT security, then we effectively have a franchise model which is very low cost. I mean, basically become a member, find some friends, badge it under IoT security, and then you get access to all our best practices, and you have a local discussion what's right in your region.
And that feeds into your global discussion, I guess.
It does, and so the overarching mission for us is to make it safe to connect in the era of IoT.
Okay, well, that's a good way to stop. John, thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, Nitin.
Thank you.